In 2024, the NFL witnessed a draft that was more full of high-end quarterback talent than ever before. 6 quarterbacks were taken in the first round for the first time since 1983. On top of that, all 6 were off the board by pick 12. But while most of these picks were praised for their great fit, outstanding potential, or solid value, one quarterback selection was almost universally mocked. Now, however, with the 2024 season winding down, it's starting to look like the team that was criticized for looking towards the future could have given their franchise one of the biggest boosts for this 2024 season. This is Michael Penix Jr.'s crazy rise to the NFL. Michael Terrence Penix Jr. was born in Cookeville, Tennessee in the year 2000, before moving to Dade City, Florida in his youth. Penix has said that he's been playing football since he was 5 years old, but he hit the pro scouting radar in his junior year of high school, starting at quarterback for the Tampa Bay Technical High Titans. In his 2 seasons as the starter, he threw for over 4,000 yards and more than 60 touchdowns, while throwing just 6 interceptions. Thanks to one of the biggest arms in his recruiting class, Penix received offers from across the country, despite having just a 3-star prospect rating. Among these offers, he heard from Florida State, Oregon, and Tennessee. But the most appealing offer to Penix came from Coach Tom Allen and the Indiana Hoosiers. He enrolled in 2018 and saw immediate playing time, with his prototypical size, combined with a laser beam mounted to his shoulder, making him too good to bench. Unfortunately, Penix's promising start hit a bump in the road when he came face to face with the injury bug, something that would become all too common for him. After just 3 games at the collegiate level, Penix Jr. tore his ACL, ending his freshman season and landing him on the medical redshirt roster. Coming back from injury in 2019, Penix battled for and won the starting job over Peyton Ramsey, although they handed it back and forth early in the year. Between the 2 quarterbacks, it was Michael Penix Jr. who was the most productive, going 3-1 as a starter, but he was banged up for most of that early stint. And after just 6 games, he had another season-ending injury, this time an SC joint dislocation in his right shoulder. Penix became the full-time starter going into 2020 after Peyton Ramsey transferred to Northwestern. And despite COVID-19 affecting so many teams negatively, Penix really caught his stride. He threw 14 touchdowns in 5 games, leading the Hoosiers to reach a high ranking of number 7 in the AP poll. Unfortunately, once again, Penix couldn't get to the end of the season, re-tearing the ACL that went in his freshman year, leading him to miss Indiana's last 2 games. At this point, MPJ was having real struggles with his mental health because of the injury issues. All the time, rehabbing injuries and consistently being held back by his body was taking a toll on Penix, and he spent a lot of time praying for a better way. He was so driven to get back on the field that he returned in 2021 despite not being medically cleared to return from his second ACL tear. While his knee managed to hold up after the injury, Penix struggled in his redshirt junior season, throwing more interceptions than touchdowns for the only time in his career. What was even worse, though, was a dislocation in his throwing shoulder after 5 games, which ended his season early for a 4th time in a row. Whilst the injuries were devastating, Penix had been a revelation for the Hoosiers when on the field, captaining the ship to their first winning season since 2007. Despite the relative success, though, Penix knew his ceiling was higher than Big Ten runner-up. With 2 years of eligibility left due to COVID and his medical redshirt, Penix knew he needed a change. He talked to his head coach of 4 years in Tom Allen, and while he said he'd always be a Hoosier, he needed a new beginning and the chance to finish his collegiate career on top of a mountain. He entered the transfer portal and was brought to the Pacific Northwest by Cam DeBoer and the Washington Huskies. It was in his new location that Penix would get the fresh start he wanted, as well as the opportunity he needed to prove himself as an elite talent. DeBoer was Penix's offensive coordinator in Indiana in 2019 and helped scout him, so he knew there was plenty of talent just waiting to come out, and MPJ didn't squander the second chance. In 2022, Penix Jr. led all quarterbacks in FBS in passing yards per game with 358, and alongside rising stars like Rome Odunze and Troy Fautanu, the Huskies went from 4-8 in 2021 to 11-2. They toppled multiple ranked opponents, including Michigan State, Texas, and a 6th-ranked Oregon side, finishing the year ranked 8th in the AP poll despite only being good enough for 3rd in the Pac-12. For his efforts, Penix got serious Heisman buzz, finishing in the same neighborhood as Bryce Young and Bijan Robinson. Washington had multiple 1,000-yard receivers, and Penix threw 31 touchdowns on top of his 4,600 yards. For the first time in his career, not only was Michael Penix healthy, but he had a good enough team around him to be a legitimate contender. He celebrated his newfound success by carrying that momentum into one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a non-powerhouse college in a while. The 2023 Washington Huskies were one of 3 teams to go undefeated in the regular season, making the college football playoffs for the program's first time since 2016. On the way there, Penix once again dominated every other FBS school by the numbers. Just shy of 5,000 yards, he again led D1 in yards per game, but this time led in total yards as well, partially thanks to leading FBS in passing attempts. Without a reliable run game, the Huskies counted on Penix to be their offense, and he stumbled at times, leading the Pac-12 in interceptions with 11. Despite the mistakes, however, Penix showed incredible poise and chemistry with his team. While Rome Odunze was by far his best and favorite target, totaling 92 catches for 1,640 yards, which led the FBS, Jalen Polk also crossed 1,100 yards, and Penix threw touchdowns to 8 total receivers. After being so consistent, especially against ranked opponents like USC, Oregon State, and Oregon twice in a season, Penix was awarded for leading the Huskies to a Pac-12 championship with the Maxwell Award, given to the best all-around player in college football. He was also a finalist for the 2023 Heisman Trophy, and came up just 300 total votes behind Jaden Daniels. In the college football playoffs, the Huskies managed to upset a very strong Texas team in the first round, but once again, Michael Penix's body began to fight against him. He was forced to wear padding to protect his ribs in the 2023 season's championship game against Michigan before picking up injuries to both his torso and ankle. Washington came up short, but Penix muscled through injury to play from start to finish. Outmatched against a dominant Wolverines team, Penix threw for 255 yards and a touchdown, despite being unable to get the running game going. His 2 interceptions were unfortunate, but the 34-13 loss was still a victory for Penix, who had shown just how well he could perform when given a chance on the national stage. As I've mentioned a few times, Penix's claim to fame is his nuclear warhead of an arm. He was healthy enough for his pro day and the NFL scouting combine to impress with his 6'2" frame and solid athleticism. While certainly a traditional pocket passer, he has the speed to peel off strong runs, and his ability to read defenses and set his own tempo in the passing game makes him a threat to every level of the field. Going into the draft, Penix's age as a 6th-year student, as well as his injury history, were significant concerns for teams to consider, and most pundits saw him as a late first-rounder at best, due to most teams going all in for one of the top 4 prospects. On top of the physical concerns, scouts pointed out the challenges of developing a left-handed quarterback in a right-handed league, as well as some accuracy issues he showed, especially against Michigan. He was still a highly touted prospect, but he would need the right fit. The 2024 draft came with a lot of hype and even more conversations about quarterback prospects and their potential fits. While it was fairly clear where teams like the Bears and Commanders were looking, there was buzz surrounding potential trades, positional surprises, and general thoughts that any team could be a wild card. After the first 3 picks, the consensus top 3 quarterbacks were off the board. The top 2 receivers followed behind them, along with Joe Alt, the consensus top tackle. With no defensive players being taken, projections expected the Falcons, picking at number 8 overall, to shore up their defensive line with high-end talent like Dallas Turner from Alabama, Laiatu Latu from UCLA, or Byron Murphy from Texas. Instead, Atlanta dropped a bomb, selecting Michael Penix Jr. This move elicited a lot of ridicule from the larger football community, made worse by Atlanta's decision to sign free agent Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million deal just a couple of months earlier. Add to that the fact that Penix was considerably older than the other so-called project quarterbacks who could benefit from a Jordan Love-like development plan, and the move was baffling for many. The Falcons then brought on even more criticism when they decided Penix had shown them enough in his preseason debut, leading 2 scoring drives before being officially named the backup and stashed away, not appearing in either of the other 2 preseason games. The Falcons clearly liked what they saw, and now it seems like they were sharper than their critics. The proof of Penix's potential and great fit in Atlanta is already on tape, and not just from college. After sitting behind Kirk Cousins for 15 weeks, the Falcons called the number of their new franchise quarterback, benching Kirk Cousins after an underwhelming 5-game stretch that included 4 consecutive losses and 9 interceptions. With a premium piece ready and waiting, Atlanta pulled the trigger and slotted Penix into the lineup in Week 16 to tackle the New York Giants, who are a pretty ideal team to try a new quarterback against. In his first career start, there were speed bumps, but there were also flashes of brilliance. The Falcons beat the Giants 34-7, scoring 34 unanswered thanks to a great defensive performance and an efficient day from their new starter. Penix completed 67% of his passes for 202 yards, and his stats arguably should have been even better since 3 of his incompletions were on true drops from his receivers. His interception on the day came from one of those drops, which was an embarrassing effort by his tight end Kyle Pitts. To make matters even better, multiple teammates talked about how poised he was all week. Faced with the tricky task of stepping into the spotlight mid-season with little time to prepare and adjust to being QB1. Guys like Bijan Robinson loved the way Penix held himself in his first career start, which is a very promising sign moving forward. Now, no one is saying that Michael Penix Jr. is going to be the same force multiplier that Jaden Daniels has been in Washington, but it's not going too far to project that this upgraded quarterback could propel Atlanta to their first division title since 2016, and even into being a real playoff contender in a fiery NFC race. Their defense has developed enough under Raheem Morris, and their offensive tools are among the best in the NFL. The missing piece was efficient, big-time ready quarterback play, which, hopefully, they now have. Unlike Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr. has already stood on the biggest stage, and despite a litany of injuries, the lights weren't too bright for him. Even better, Penix has the arm talent that prime Kirk just managed to tickle. He has the physical tools to get Drake London to the ceiling that was promised when he was drafted in the top 10. The same is true for guys like Darnell Mooney and Kyle Pitts, and the passing game being stronger will only help Bijan Robinson continue to dominate. By putting their faith in the rookie, the Falcons are not just looking forward to the future, they're aiming for the stars, and it looks like they have the guy to get them there. But what do you think? Is Michael Penix Jr. a franchise quarterback in the making, and do you think he can get the Falcons to the playoffs? Let me know in the comments below.